Hello, everybody, and welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I'm going to be your DM during this DM prep session today. This is my weekly live stream that I run every week to prepare for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign that I'm running on Tuesdays. So I have a couple days to massage things. I'm enjoying this campaign quite a bit, even though we're only a few sessions in. And I am going to share with you today some thoughts and experiences that I have in terms of developing the things for my game that I think are important. Now, Rime of the Frostmaiden has gotten a little bit of, I think, unfair criticism because people seem to think it needs work. I will tell you that I don't mind that. I actually think it's a great module. I don't mind it specifically because the things that I would need to modify, the things that I would need to do are things that I would have done anyway. I tend to make modules my own. Modules are always a bit of an IKEA furniture purchase, if you ask me, whether they're official modules or whether they're DM's Guild modules or just something you download from the internet. They require a lot of work on the part of the GM. So I'm going to go through that here, show you a little bit of my process. I hope you enjoy that. I would love to chat a bit with you about D&D as we work through these. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please go ahead and leave them down on the chat if you're live or on the tavern wall in the comments down below. Now, this is a brand new stream, so I really want to thank my first subscribers and followers from last week. I have so few I can name them personally. Appalachian Rose and Brock's BFF. Thank you very much. Here's a big congratulations to you from the world's okayest DM to the world's best subscribers. Now, I have a couple of subscribers on YouTube as well, and I actually don't know how to find your names. So I will mention you by name, I promise, in a future week, but I'm going to have to look a little bit harder to how to find out your screen handles. And in my fantasy world, maybe I'll get to a point where I have too many new subscribers to thank personally, but I doubt it. I think this is always going to be a little stream. So I'm going to do my best to welcome people here. What I want out of this is I want to demystify the process of game preparation. For people who enjoy game theory, I'm going to talk a little bit about that here. And I really, really hope that you're able to look at game streams if you're thinking about running a game yourself, and that you will choose to run a game. We need more game masters. We need more people running games. This is an inclusive community. Don't let anybody convince you of the lie of anything else. Get out there and run games. Get out there and create. Do your thing. Express your point of view and create some fun for people. That's really all there is to it. All right. So I want to say that I used the Lazy Dungeon Master's prep technique as part of this development. So of my weekly session prep. Let me cover that really quickly, but that was created by someone called Sly Flourish. That's his nickname. You can find him out on Twitter. You can find him under slyflourish.com. I highly recommend go buy his books. They're really great for having you spice up your game, having you develop some frameworks for how you're going to develop your session prep, and really economic ways to do that. And that's what I'm going to do here. So if you look at the document that I have in front of you, this is a standard document that format I typically use, and I'll get to what application I'm using here in a second. But this is, I usually list out the players at the very top. Something I personally do is I don't just list a little blurb about the player themselves. I tend to list what I find about players' traits as we go along in the game. And I really suggest that you do this. Players you really have to know what it is that they like taste-wise about their characters and about the game. And everyone talks about active feedback. I think that's highly valuable. You should ask your players, what do they enjoy? I recommend don't just give them a general question, but ask them what did they specifically like about this game or that game. The more important thing for me as a GM anyway is that I like to observe them. I like to look at what it is that they seem to get energized about, what they seem to key in on, what they seem to remember. A technique that I use each session is I have the players describe what happened in the previous session. Now that takes a little bit of a burden off of me, but the big thing it does is it tells me what did they find interesting about last session? What stuck in their memory? And that says a lot about the plot threads and the plot lines that they are finding interesting. And as they go along, I make those notes down in the players section. I give myself a little description of where we were. I remind myself a themes area. This is my own ad, little themes to make sure that when I'm looking at the secrets that we'll get to a little bit later, that they all stick to that central core theme of what I'm trying to accomplish in the session. Another ad of my own is what do I want out of this upcoming session? I write something about, what are the plot elements I need to reveal? What are the tone I want to set? How do I want the pacing to go? Anything like that I put down just to remind myself and go through an exercise of thinking through, hey, what do I want out of this session? So that I make sure I'm sticking to my intention. Now, games go off the rails all the time. They go in some other direction that you hadn't participated, and that's fine. You should let them. You shouldn't use this as an anchor to pull people back to where you want them to be. You should be using this as a means to remind yourself as you're developing plot threads, secrets, scenes, and other things. What do you think should be happening here? So you're consistent as a DM and telling the same story. Again, this is also my own ad. I write out the plot threads I have. I do that specifically for me because I am horrible about creating multiple plot threads. I am horrible about having multiple storylines going. I try to tie them together in this big complex web of intrigue, and it's almost always lost on the players. So I really am trying to stick to a few core themes. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have subplots, and I certainly do. What I'm trying to do here, however, is loop it back around to make sure that every subplot feeds back into one of my major plots. And that's what I'm sort of doing here. I write out potential scenes, so where I think they're likely to occur and what are the most likely scenes that they're likely to have. This is a mix of a copy of my notes from last week and what I'll be filling in to go forward in today's game prep, by the way. Then, and that's from the potential scenes is from the lazy DM technique. The secrets and information, that's also from the lazy DM technique. It's just a quick blurb about what's sort of happening in the background. An important part of this is I don't set how you discover it. I don't tell you how to actually uncover those clues. I just say what they are, and I leave it sort of up to the players. And I'll get to in the recap how that worked out really well for me last session. I write out some important NPCs. I tend to group them by location so I can reference them easier. Write in some fantastic locations so you try to spice up. There's a lot of just plain flat fields in a lot of modules, so I use this to sort of beef up where the players might be going and where the action might be happening, especially if there's an environmental hazard or an environmental aspect to the combat that I can add here. I really want to do that. And then I just the secrets from the previous section, if they've been revealed, I usually just drop them down there so I can make sure that I remember what we're doing here. All right, so what we have. I have 4 players in this game. I have a barbarian. I have a paladin. That's Rias. I have Nim, a mage, and I have Liger. He is a ranger. So I got lost in my track of thought. I should have put in. By the way, before I start in, massive spoilers for Rime of the Frostmaiden, Icewind Dale. That's a certain campaign I'm running, so I'm going to talk through my prep for that. So just be aware, absolutely massive spoilers for that module. If you don't want to be spoiled, please don't use it. Please don't listen to the stream. And my players, go away. Please don't listen to the stream. Honor system, it's actually kind of weird. I don't think I've actually mentioned to my players where the stream is or what I'm streaming under. I have told them and asked them permission if I can use their names, their character names and stuff, but no personal details. But this is where I've gone. So the format, by the way, I've switched over from last week. I think I was using Google Docs. I've actually tried this Notion.so. A couple people have recommended it to me online. I needed something to keep my notes in, and I really like it so far. I just spent last night transferring my notes over. I had actually been using OneNote and maybe using the display here in this stream to be Google Docs so you can read it, but I needed something else that kept it more aggregated and centralized. I'm liking it so far. I didn't like OneNote because I was out. First of all, there's different versions of OneNote and they all do different things, and that made me crazy. And then second, honestly, I went to copy and paste a line of text from my OneNote into Discord, and I ended up, it would only paste imagery, which I thought was just bananas. And I just can't use the software if it's going to do that, if I just want to paste simple text. So anyway, I'm giving this a try. I hope it's useful for me. I put kind of critical links for my campaign here at the top of every one of my notes so I can do a template, so I can get to my campaign Zoom, my campaign calendar, my Foundry VTT. Let me show you the campaign calendar, by the way. Hopefully this will come up quickly. But yeah, so I use a campaign calendar to mark the days as we go by. Rime of the Frostmaiden is heavy on travel, so lots of days pass, which I think is great. And I use the note section to sort of let me know what date, what major event happened. And I just got this off of online somewhere. Someone had a Forgotten Realms calendar. I updated it for the date I wanted to use. And this has been super effective for me. So I'm very happy for this tool, and I recommend you use it too if you're going to develop a Rime of the Frostbane campaign. Links to our Foundry virtual tabletop, links to our D&D Beyond, all that kind of stuff, easily accessible. I also linked stuff back and forth to the Forgotten Realms wiki for easy reference for myself. And you can link things internally. So all of that, super useful for me, and it's been very, very, very good. So, Rime of the Frostbane, what am I trying to do here? Where we have been, we are the 3rd session in, and I heavily modify and remix these encounters because for several reasons. And that's why I do what I want out of this session, because I want to link together a more sensible set of plot threads. I want to give more purpose to what the players are doing, and I want to overcome what I think are some gaps in the module. Not because it's a poorly written module. I actually think it's a good written module, but there are things that I want out of it. And that's what I recommend when people talk about modules that you consider. don't consider criticizing a module. Don't say it's good or bad, thumbs up or thumbs down. Say what you want out of it. Did it do that? And what does it need? What needs to happen to make it do the things you want? I actually think that's a way better critique of modules than someone might critique it like they critique a novel. Because all modules, all games require a derivative work. The game master, it requires the game to actually work. The module isn't the game. The DM and the players are the game. That's how it actually goes out. The module, the rules, those are just frameworks to help push a game along. But the game is the DM and the players. So anyway, I think it's a good module. It needs a couple things. So what we have is the party just arrived in the town of Tourmaline. I always pronounce that wrong. I have problems with the pronunciations in this module. They're in pursuit of Torga Icewind and Sefek Kaltro. They're a murderer. So I set it up. I'm using the Cold-Hearted Killer module and significantly sort of modifying this. You can see down in the plot thread what I've said about this module. I think what I wanted out of it, as the adventure was presented, it is a straight up go to this place and kill this person module. Maybe a little bit of tactical considerations, but I felt like that. I wanted more richness out of the module. I wanted to make a statement a little bit more about who the people are in this region, what conflicts they're contesting with, and I wanted something to move players along to see how things affect things in the region. So I did two things. One, I gave a through line to that module. So I made Torga Icefane a former Tiger Tribe person. I think she started out as a shield dwarf. So I made her a human, a member of the Tiger Tribe. She had been outcast for cannibalism at one time and brought back in after the leader of the Tiger Tribe started to worship Oriel, who's the goddess who's causing this great winter that's coming across the land. I made it so that she has a sort of a warrior that was granted to her by Oriel, who's this undead character of Sefek Kaltro, I think. Sefek Kaltro. A great stack block, great kind of interesting base stuff for this character. You can summon ice swords and do all this stuff. But the core thing is she's going around killing people who have offended Oriel by getting out of the sacrifices that the towns have to do, and then using them in some sort of sacrifice to gain favor and power, kind of like a cheap warlock, to do different things. Her major goal is she wants to recover weapons and artifacts from the tomb of an ancient Tiger Tribe hero hidden somewhere on Kevin's Cairn. And she's been doing these sacrifices to get power and doing other things. So as part of that, I'm linking this to the next adventure that the party is heading out on, which is the Beautiful Mine scenario. Again, kind of flat. They just kind of go into a mine, find a ghost possessing one of the kobolds there, and there's a possibility of either combat or there's a possibility of negotiation, and then some underlying ghost possession sort of plot line. But it to me, I wanted more, one, to tie it to the greater plot of the area, to give sort of a cause and effect. And I wanted a little bit more blatant, I wanted more foreshadowing for the players, and I'll get to that in a bit, about how they can tell there's a ghost here, what they might be able to do about it, express some of the weaknesses of the ghost. Because this module's that adventure, as far as I can tell, is aimed at a level 2 party, and the ghost is something like CR5 after you defeat its outer shell. So I wanted to modify that a little bit to give a little bit more richness to that story. So what I'm saying is that in Torga Icefane, in her pursuit of this tomb that she's looking for with the artifacts, she had no way to find it, but she knew that a scholar from the Arcane Brotherhood had been in Icewind Dale doing some research on the former tombs and might have had some information about it, which they did. So Janth, the ghost in the Beautiful Mind module who possesses the kobold, what I said is Torga used one of the ritual sacrifices that she did to raise a spirit in sort of like a speak with dead, but it was really bind a ghost to this world so she could make a deal with the ghost to get information from it about where these tombs lie and things like that. So that's what she did. She got some information from it. So long and short of it is the kind of, I'll write some secrets for this in a second, but what I want out of this is the party to go into the mine. I want them to understand a little bit more about why this ghost was raised, and it's connected to Torga Icefane. Right now, they don't know that. And I want them to get information from that ghost or their books about what was told to Torga and where she's going next. So I want this to be an introduction to them of how these cause and effect items happen across the world and how it can lead into the next conclusion of the cold-hearted killer. That's another thing. I've written a note for myself. So like every GM, I have these small quirks. I tend to overcomplicate things. I forget to put stuff in. Oh my gosh, I forget to put all kinds of stuff in. So what I do, I write a Post-it note. I put it on my DM screen. It says something small like, remember to keep it simple, or don't add more plot threads, or, get right to the reward. That's often a challenge DMs have. They put a reward far off in the future because they want to milk that for more and more. So I want to put stuff further up. So I imagine these characters will finish this Torga Icebane thread in Cold-Hearted Killer and exit it at about level 3. That's what I'm hoping for. And they're positioned well to do it. They're in Tourmaline, which is right sort of by Kevin's Cairn, close enough, a few miles away. So they can just go from here to Kevin's Cairn to the tomb, where we'll end up in next session or the session after that. So I have a couple of plot threads written out here. That's exactly what I just said. I explained to you the Cold-Hearted Killer plot thread. Janth Alawar, he cannot let go of this world. That's the spirit I just said that's possessing this person. He seeks possession of a person of higher substance. So we'll get to secrets in a second. I'm also tying this to a couple pair of backstories. The two big threads here are the Harpers were killed, were assassinated in a big sort of Night of the Long Night type of event that happened 5 years previously or so, and they're just recovering. So one of the players has a secret that they are working with the Harpers. So there's this Zentarum throughput that I'll get to in a second. I want to see that in the 10 towns. And then there's this ancestor spirits, all of the tribes of of Icewind Dale, all of the Redarg tribes. Again, I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry, but the barbarian tribes of Icewind Dale all have some ancient ancestor that I have this plot line for, where they were horizon stalkers. They were the original horizon walkers who guarded the veil between the planes. When creatures that came over to our plane, they had a mission to sort of kill them. And I want to see if I can attract one of the players into that, because one of the players is playing a hermit background, so they lived in one of these other tombs, and there's a ghost that they found as a part of it. So the backstory I set up here is this is one of the spirits of these ancient ancestors, and it might draw that player into it. So we'll see where it goes. So let's talk about the secrets, and then we'll get to potential scenes, because I think this will be sort of interesting. And I need to add a few secrets here. So let's see where this goes. So let me see. So one, I already have a secret up. The Zentarum are trying to steal seats, to seat their agents on the Speaker's Council. So one of the plot threads is in and I've actually called them the Chardelin Syndicate. Chardelin Syndicate are trying to seat their speakers in every town. They've only done it in one town, which is Torga, but in a lot of the town write-ups, there's some member of this that has not quite gotten in. They've gone to Tamerlane, and in that it says, due to political intrigue, the speaker only narrowly won, and there's bitter political infighting. So I need a secret here. I don't think I have one. Yeah, so I need a secret here that says there is and they say the town guard won't go into the mine. What has happened is a bunch of kobolds have taken over a gem mine near it, has shut the business down. They need to get into this, they need to get into the mine and clear the kobolds out, maybe discover that there's a ghost possessing and there's more going on there. But before they get in, I want to give them an encounter that lets them know the stakes of what's going on in town. No combat, just a role-playing encounter. So I need so what do I need? I need the guard won't go in and clear it. They didn't say why, so I'm going to say the captain of Tourmaline. I'll spell that right later, and I can't even spell captain apparently. Captain of Tourmaline Guard was the opposition in the political fight with the speaker, and won't help because of politics. He is a member of the Chardelin Syndicate. He is actually he or she, they, so I'll say they, I'll figure that out later, are a member of the Chardelin Syndicate. Syndicate. I need to give some, how do I tell the players that though? I mean, there's no point in writing these secrets if there's no way to come across. So what I think I'll do, I had them encounter their first Charterland Syndicate member last session. If you watched last stream, which you might not have, hello, welcome to the stream, viewers. Welcome. Please ask any questions if you have it, and I'd love to talk about Rime of the Frostmaiden or anything D&D. So go ahead and ask if you have any questions. So back to this. So the Charterland Syndicate, I want someone to tie it. Last time I finished a Foaming Mugs quest that I actually turned into an inside job where one of the dwarves was a part of that heist. This session that I just ran, I had this back alley. One of the players have to follow these dwarf to uncover that conspiracy. They get into a sort of a fight, not a fight, but they get into an argument with their patron who was asking them to rob that. The player found out a little bit of who this was and understand they're part of some conspiracy to take over the 5 towns. They got a little bit of information about them, but not more. So when I have the player encounter this town guard member, I want to have some brooch I'll have a brooch or a badge. Brooch or a badge with some symbol that says, there's a link between this guy causing problems and the guy in the last town causing problems. So what do I want? Let's have what's the symbol? Hello, Zach the Semantic. Hi. What symbol do I want to use? Yeah, let me see. So I'll use a Charterland rose. Charterland rose. I don't know what that would actually look like, but that's what I'll say, that they have a small badge with a Charterland rose on it. And that's sort of the symbol of their little conspiracy or brotherhood. And so I want a potential scene. So given that secret, I want a scene where the, let me add a list. Can I just add a list? Bulleted list. There we go. I want outskirts of mine. No, I don't want to fight here. I mean, outskirts of mine, town guard shows up. What will they do? Zach the Semantic are looking for any homebrew items for October. Oh, that's so I post them occasionally, Zach the Semantic, to my Twitter account. So I'm Optional Rule on Twitter. I actually do make some items. I have a Scimitar the Stalker that I use for Rangers. It gives them some Hunter's Mark abilities and a few others like that. I'll be posting them throughout October, several a week. So go ahead and keep look at my Twitter, and I'll post them there, full stat block. So, and I usually link to them in D&D Beyond. I use D&D Beyond a lot. By the way, no sponsors here, so everything you'll hear me mention is just I like them, and those are the tools I use. So outskirts of the mine. I want the town guard to show up. I want the captain to try to shoo them off. Tell them it's not worth it. I don't want them to cause a fight. Don't cause a fight. Grump at them and kind of go away. So I want that to set the stakes of sort of what's going on in the town, how things are interacted. Q to player, the Charterland Rose. So really what they get out of that is they realize that there's some bitter politics in town. They realize that the town guard is not with the speaker, and those are the stakes. And they realize that this person is connected to the mob boss. Well, mob boss is a bad name, but the criminal guy from Bryn Shander. So there'll be some through line between these locations that they can sort of make a connection. Now this is critical. Really, some advice I give to DMs. This is a clue I want to drop to players, and you'll see this when we get into the mine. When you have clues that are important bottlenecks for plots later on in the adventure, don't require a roll to notice. Don't make some kind of failure where now they can't go forward in the story. If you have a clue for some either plot that you really want to get across or is an important gatekeeping element for the rest of the adventure, just tell them. If you want to include roles or use insight or investigation or something like that, add clues on the back end of it that tell them something value added about it. They give them deeper information or more information, but don't hide clues behind gates. Give it to them right away. Tell it to the player with the most context and let him go forward from there. I can't think of what would have more context for this other than, actually, I'm lying. So players. So what would be great is if the players notice like this character has new clothing. They seem to be nouveau rich, right? They've just gotten a little bit more money and they're able to, so something they're wondering, well, what was the thing that happened in this person's life that suddenly made them more rich? So I'll do an investigate. Players investigate. check to notice new money on captain. That'll be good. That'll be good. So it tells a story. So they're on the outskirts of the mine. They see the sign outside that says kobolds only. They've already got the job from the town speaker, by the way. And one of the players is sort of canoodling with that town speaker. She really likes to play a flirtatious character. That's a little bit out of my comfort zone, to be honest, but I'm going down that road and I'm letting it happen. Zach the Semantic says, I thought of a fun thing to give each party member, a ragged teddy bear that auto-tunes TP2, I guess, the owner, and acts as a voodoo doll. Sure. I mean, any flavorful items like that are super useful. The flowing cape I gave out in my Dragons of Icespire peak game is probably the most popular magic item I've ever given out. Things that change colors, things that make sound, those are always great. In terms of magic items, I love to give out magic items, but I tend to make them charge items and then they expire after it. So I'm generous with my magic items, but they tend to be charged items, and I only sprinkle in a few permanent items over time. All right, so that's the first scene. The second scene that we want out of this is, let me talk about secrets. What else do I have in here? So nothing else really for the town. Torga Icefane, that's all secrets about. She was an outcast of the Tiger Tribe. That's probably going to come out this session. Torga is a shaman that performed a ritual book of a book for a dead scholar. That's how Janth, the ghost in the mine, got raised. I gave a name to the ancestor's tomb she's looking for. I just made that up. And yeah, that's all I have. So I need a couple of other secrets for inside the mine. So inside the mine, I need Janth, this ghost, this spirit of this scholar she raised. Now, the stakes here, this person knows, was raised by Torga. He is the gateway to get to where she's gone to find this tomb. He knew where it's at. So she cut a deal with him, says, if you tell me, I'll ask Oriel and use these sacrifices I made to use my power to ask Oriel to give you permanent ghost status, and you can go out and go do what you want. And that's the deal she made with him. She got the information. He's gone out. The first thing he ran across with this kobold. He's looking to up his game a little bit because he can possess this body and do all the things he wants. Now, I play ghosts as sort of semblances of what they were in life. So if they can possess this kobold, he can sort of prepare spells because he was a wizard, and I'll have him do all those things. But his big thing, the thing tying him to this world, is Janth has his journal with, and I want to get back to Charlin and set the stage of this gem of Charlin that they keep finding throughout the world, because in chapter 3, when they fight the dwarves, that's going to play a major role in that. And I want to set up what Charlin is. I don't want it to just suddenly really appear out of the sky. So a journal infused, I'll say infused with Charlin as part of the ritual. Ooh, I know what I'll do. I'll say, and it includes a contract signed in blood. A contract signed in victim's blood. I can't spell that. Boy, I really stink today. And this is a great example why these secrets work, by the way. I said I was going to say something about that earlier. Last session, a completely unpredictable event happened. I'd set up this murder plot. The players are hired to follow Torga by a bounty hunter who wants to do one last good thing for the world before he dies because he's old and expiring. So he hired the party to find these people. And he doesn't really care that they've been murdering, what they do is they've been murdering people who offended Oriel by bribing their way out of the, in one form or another, out of the human sacrifice that happens at every new moon. The players wouldn't really care about that, so I set it up that additionally, they've been killing anybody in the household in this ritualized fashion as well. So that sets up at least some innocence that the players can go in and do something. I didn't set up, it's supposed to be investigate. So what I did is they overnighted in Torga because it was too far from Bryn Shander to Tamerlane in one night. So they decided to make a stopover. And since they know one of the victims happened here, they went to their house. I had not prepared that scene, but I had these secrets down that they were killing them for these ritual sacrifices. And I set up this whole thing where some neighbors heard something and they were able to investigate the site. And it really just played off way better than I thought, because one of the players, their secrets are, we haven't gotten to this yet, but they can hear voices of dead people. So they had this horror element of voices in the background and screams they uncovered under a carpet, sort of these ritual symbols. And that was able to sort of get seed with them this plot thread that there's some sort of ritual sacrifice going on to Oriel itself, and that they know she's a tribesman because one of the players is a tribesman, and they recognize the symbols used as sort of ritual symbols typically used by the nomads in the area. So that just having these secrets spelled out allowed me on the fly to come up with the encounter. And it was entirely a role-playing encounter, which worked out perfectly. It was tense. Players were very worried about drawing attention to themselves. They were very concerned about what happened to the people in the building. I had this nice old lady next door who lived next door come out and have tea with one of them, try to chase them off at first. It was great. It was great. So having this secrets rather than spelled out encounters, what that does is it lets you change things up, know what's going on in the background in a way that you can really create some content on the fly. I find it super useful. I hope you use that technique too. So anyway, what I'm getting here is what I want out of this mine is I want the players, there's two ways the players can get information about where Torga went. They can question the ghost, maybe make a deal with themselves. That's going to be hard to do. Or they can find the ghost's journal and read the back of it and find out what he told them, because he obsessively keeps things. So, Janeth, I'm saying, has this journal that's infused with Charlton as part of the ritual. It includes a contract signed in victim's blood. What that will do plot-wise for me is it'll tell the players what happened if they just straight up killed Janeth. And it includes more notes about what's happened since. So this basically lets the players know what was all this if they just go in, burn the place to the ground, and find out. Now, the book might get destroyed, but who knows? We'll have to see. Or Janth will tell it themselves. So that's one of the other things I want to set is they get into the mine. I want... so one of the gaps, I think, in the adventure is that they just kind of go into the mine. They see some kobolds. The kobolds attack them on sight, so that lends to a combat scenario. And then they sort of get to to Janth, which is this kobold. The only sign that they have that he's unusual is he wears wings for some reason. I can't figure out why, actually. And he doesn't speak like a kobold. He speaks for sort of very, very upper crustly, and he speaks with lots of elocution and lots of intelligent dialogue and blah blah blah. And so that's supposed to set him apart. Fair enough. I don't think there's enough foreshadowing, though, to let them know that something is going on. And worst of all, they just kind of go through this mine, and when they get to the end, he's just randomly standing in some narrow hallway, which is a weird prospect. So what I want out of the mine is I want to say, and actually let me go to the virtual tabletop because I can show you where we BTT. Login. This is Foundry, by the way. This is Foundry. It's a new virtual tabletop. I switched to it for this game. Not now. Close. Dismiss. And let me get rid of that chat log for last game. All right. So down in the mine, they have this. Let me get over to the journal. There we go. Sorry about that. So I want them to sort of get clues that there's something more going on with Janth as they sort of get through as they sort of uncover more and more clues. So this is the mine itself. You can see I've got the NPCs in here already. So they kind of come in here. They just go through this flat mine, walk down here, and then Janth is sort of in the end of this hallway for no discernible reason. So what I want to do is down in this area here where a couple of kobolds are poking, and all they're doing is poking a rat. I want to give some indicator that people are living down here since the players have to bottleneck through it. So what do I want out of that? What I want is level 2. So on the level 2 room, Janth has been trying to live well down here, and set up wizard's equipment and a small study. When players in the say on level 2, he runs away when he realizes there's no real good way to realize it, but when he realizes players have come into the mine and is hiding down the tunnel. So that's a bit better. I'll have so Janth. So I'll have him sort of that leads into a conversation. Janth, I need Janth is obsessed with the book. What I want to do, because again, I'm worried that Janth is a CR5 creature. This is a level 2 party. That's quite a risk. In addition to the ghost can possess people. So if they defeat the kobold, force the ghost out of the body, and then have to fight it, that could be quite a challenge for the players if it doesn't try to run. I don't want it to try to run. I want it to stick around for them to try to question it. So obsessed with so I'm going to say Janth is obsessed with that only spelled right, with his book. And it is the material object binding him to this plane. Object binding him to this plane. So that gives, so what do I want? He'll clutch it. How do I communicate that to the players? Clutch it, fidget with it, and rub it like the precious. So I imagine as he's talking, he's going to sort of hold it and hug it to him and rub the book and tap it and wave it, kind of hold it up in the air and do all of those things to sort of give a tell to the players that this book is very important to him every time. Once they realize there's a spirit, it might make the leap that, this book is important to him. They might nuke it. That's a downside. So if the only two ways are to kill the ghost or to nuke the book, they nuke it. So I could take two paths there. I could just say, however they destroy it, some pages are left from the journal that they can make out some more information, or I could make him stick around for a while and answer questions as he's fading, and kind of please, no, don't let me go, something. Well, we can do something. I'll probably leave pages in the book, but. Yeah, that's a good enough secret for them to sort of lead in. And once they get to this idea that he tells a story that this woman raised me from the dead and asked me these questions about this tomb, and they realize that that's Torga Icefane, because they're going in again here without any knowledge of that. They'll realize, these are connected events, and I'm pointing towards something. This will also be the big reveal that of the stakes, that they're going to a tomb on the mountain to recover artifacts. Now, there's a couple player hooks in that for my specific campaign. One, Nim, the mage, is extremely interested in artifacts, and that's his big character arc. He wants to find artifacts to make a name for himself. So that'll hook him. Two, Stor, who's a barbarian from the Wolf tribe, is kind of protective of traditionalist views of the tribe, doesn't want people messing with artifacts of the tribe. So that will entice him to go look at it. It will also teases his own backstory, where he knows he found a spirit in a mine somewhere, and maybe that will give him some information of what that or a clue as to what this spirit might be. So I think that actually creates quite a good hook here. Now the other thing I want to get across is they're encountering Charlatan. I've told them what thing is an element. Charlatan is X, but I think that's a bad technique for game masters. I always think you need to make it relevant to, I misspelled this word, but it's messing me up. Investigate. So I don't think that's a great way to express information. Don't tell players things, show them things. So what I want to do with Charlatan is let them know that Charlatan absorbs any kind of spiritual magic around them. So it tends to get infused with demonic magic, but that's not always the case. So this mine, it's just a gem mine that they're going in. The mine down here, I want the mine to be infused with gems raw that have become tainted. Ooh, that's a good foreshadowing too. Tainted with necromantic energy. Ooh, have Nim hear voices from them. That'll be great. So Nim will be able to hear voices from beyond the grave, because that's one of his backstory elements. That'll let them know that there's something some kind of necromancy going on down here. I have a player that can detect undead. So that will give that's take those clues on top of the behavior of Janth, on top of the study that they'll run across. So by the time they get to Janth itself, I will feel like I've really layered on enough foreshadowing that there's something more going on here. And if it starts to go south, they should have a clue right away of what they need to do to mitigate for this. They're not coming in cold. They'll know it's undead. They'll know it. They'll have to do something about that. One of the other risks for this, and I don't know what I'm going to do here, is it's a ghost. It might possess a player. If they force the ghost out of a body, the only way to get it out is through something like, I think I've allowed clerics to use the turn ability on it, which is totally valid. I've allowed, I think it's a protection from good or evil, but they can't cast that at the level they're at. And they can't turn. No one in the party can turn. So they've got nothing. If the ghost possesses one of the party members, we might end up with a situation where it runs off, and the next adventure is them going to release that player character. I hope not. I'd rather not have that happen. So I probably wouldn't have it happen. But that's a real risk of that difference of CR. So we'll see how that goes. So can I create a secret? So here we are. Can I create a secret that Janth doesn't want to? Oh, well, he'll have to grab the book. So I already have it. If Janth possessed a player character, they would have to run over to the book to grab it. So I'll set a secret. The Janth can't be, and I'll add it to this secret here. Janth can't be more than 100 feet. Actually, we'll say 50. Why not? 50 feet away from the book, or they disappear. I will say 30 feet. Actually, for the mind, that's actually quite good. So they can't. Anyway, 30 feet is enough. We'll say that they can't be more than 30 feet away from the book, or they disappear, or they just sort of, or they. I don't want to do that because players run out. Let's give it something more dramatic than binary. I hate binary outcomes. Then they take 3d8 hit points per round, we'll say. I might modify that to figure out. I want them gone in basically 3 rounds. So I might look at something and play those average hit points out over time. So because that's about 12 per round, and that would probably do it. All right. So, so if they get possess a player character, the player character will have to run over, grab that book, do yes, my precious, and then run out. I doubt they would get away, but let's say they'll know that they really need to target that book. All right, so I've got the secrets going across. What else did I say I want out of this adventure? This is why this is important. What I want to uncover the link between Torga and Janth, which I've talked about already. I want to establish the identity of the Chartland Syndicate faction in Tamerlane. So I want them to know there's a syndicate. That's what I talked about earlier with the captain of the guard having the pin. That clues the players in on knowing that there's some conspiracy, there's something. And I want to tease the connection to the corruption in other towns. Again, that's what it does. And then I want to point the way to Torga's destination and intents at Holand's tomb. Yeah, I've done that. So it's in the journal, or it comes from Janth. They get this realization of where this is all going, where this plot thread goes. So I can see. So they talk to Janth. One way or another, or they get it from the book, they defeat that mine, or there's another outcome here that's possible. The Janth is going to try to convince them to let it go, which actually I think would be fine. So it's going to give them this BS story about, listen, we can all get along here. And if they don't realize he's the ghost, they'll say, we just want to work in the mine, and it would be, and this is all a ruse so that he can safely get out of the mine, get in closer proximity to someone more suitable for his body, and possess that person instead. So if we go that route, I actually kind of have a happy outcome with a additional plot added. So the players would, so I'll add a secret for that. So Janth wants to possess somebody else. This is straight out of the module. So if they do it, what the players will find out later is the kobolds go to work in the mine. Janth eventually leaves the kobold leader's body, goes into some other body, and they'll find out the kobolds are working fine. It actually works out well for the mine. I don't want to poop on if the players negotiate outcome to this, I don't want to undermine that. And actually, this is an important DMing technique I would really recommend to any DMs. Earn a lot of player choices. I mean, it's fine to have things not work out or have unexpected twists happen. Betrayal is also fine, but particularly early on in a game, which is what we are, third session, and this is mostly one player I've played with before, I've DM'd for before, but all the other players are new. So we're in this process of establishing norms within our group. They're reading me as a DM. If I start putting in lots of betrayals, if I start taking their actions to talk to NPCs and overturning that, so that they get the impression that, well, let's just start attacking because this is going to be a betrayal. Anyway, I'm setting them up to habituate them to attack and be murder hobos. I don't want to do that. I want to establish baselines of trust, baselines of player agency, hugely important player agency, that the choices they're making have impact in the world. And this way, later on in the game, when we get to maybe tier 2 or the end of tier 1, I've based these things enough that if they run into a betrayal, if they run into a fork in a plot that turns around and does something they didn't expect, they don't have the assumption that this is just the DM messing with them to keep the plot going. It feels like a betrayal. They have the expectation that they can affect the world in a positive way, have it work out the way they wanted. So when that betrayal comes later, they didn't see it coming. They feel blindsided, and they know that this was about the NPC and not about the DM. Establishing those norms are incredibly useful for DMs, especially with a new group. And I will say, especially online. Online play requires way more setup, norming, and then later on adding in spicy elements for effect. It requires that way more because you're not physically sitting there with someone. Often you're not even looking at their face. We play over Zoom. We have Zoom as a video conference, but most people don't have that window up. So I'm not sure we're really looking at each other's faces. We're not making as strong a social connection. You don't have social cues to go off of. All you have is what you hear and how you're interacted. So it is so incredibly important in an online play that you set things up to normalize them, to set expectations, and to understand how your DMing technique goes, because every world can be a little different. So when setting the players up, set them up to expect agency so that when something odd happens, it's odd. It's not just a poopy world that comes out and does something different, and they feel the sense of betrayal. So that's my heavy advice there. All right. What else do we have? So I've dealt with Chance standing at the end of the tunnel. I have some notes here for the show here. That's what I'm reading. Yeah, that's what I want. So survival elements struggle with from two ways. One, how do they do it rules-wise without it being overly oppressive? And two, if anybody is sort of realistically or scientifically minded or trained, the whole scenario comes out a little weird. I mean, you have to realize that the creators of the module, they're not environmental scientists. I say this, by the way, my education is as a environmental microbiologist, so I have a little bit more depth here. I've had some exchanges with people on Twitter who just can't accept the fact of something. Just let it go. Just let it go. But if you can't, dial down the numbers to something that seems more reasonable to you. So in a module, I think it's set up as like average daily temperature is something like negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's bananas. That is not, that can happen. That's something that happens in the physical world, but people wouldn't be functioning and if that was your average daily temperature. So it's below freezing, of course, every day. The winds and the blizzards are a huge problem, and I've dialed it down a little bit in that way, but I've played up the effects of the environment much, much more than giving people numbers. And I think that's hugely important. I would actually counter with, why are you telling anybody, do they have a thermometer? Why are you telling them what temperature of something is at all? That's stupid. They don't have a thermometer. They don't have these numbers. All they know is what the effects are. So people are shivering. People come in with frostbite frequently. They can't move in the snow. I've played those elements up very heavily. So don't tell players numbers. Tell players effects. That is the best way to get something across to them. So they've run across all this. I even had this great subplot, or as a small beat. It wasn't really a plot that I recommend you put in because I wanted to express to them that even the kind of the standard magic skills of negating the environment don't always work here. And I took tiny hut as a sort of the gold standard, because that's when parties get tiny hut, they feel like they don't have to worry about camping anymore. And it is kind of true, to be honest. But I wanted to let them know that it's more complex than that. So on their way between Torga and Tamerlane, they're going down the road. They run across this caravan, pulling people out of this large embankment of snow. They're pulling dead bodies out of this in a hole that's cut in the side. They look in, they see this sort of 10-foot wide dome-shaped ice structure, because it had been a massive blizzard the night before. All these people are dead. They realize they're adventurers, and I'll actually so this is a horror element because it's related to something that can happen to people. So if you have had anybody who asphyxiated or suffocated, you might want to skip forward 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something here, or turn off the audio for a second. That, because it could be rough. But I'm sensitive to that. So what I wanted to express was, if having outdoor and survival skills is still important even with the tiny hut. So what they discover quickly is that these adventurers got caught on the road during a blizzard. They thought, no big deal, we'll throw up tiny hut. They did it. Then they lit a small fire to cook some meat on, but they didn't really have any skills, so they didn't realize the tiny hut iced over in the middle of the night completely and covered in snow, and they suffocated because of the fire. Now, that actually was hugely effective in game, because again, that's something that can happen in real life, and that's horrific. And it really landed that, oh, you don't get an automatic get out of jail free card just because I can cast magic. And it seeded that idea in the party. They also got sort of the spell book from the wizard was able to negotiate the spell book from the wizard there, which is odd. But anyway, they were able to move forward. And that was super effective. 2-minute beat. Anyway, we're past that now. So I hope that wasn't too difficult if people have trouble with that or have a background with it. But that's what that is. And so I use that. So I want that to be expressed going into this scenario as well. So I started a secret here and I didn't finish it. So let me finish the secret I started talking about someone else. So let me finish this secret. So looping back, actually, I'll get back into a second. Let me finish my current thought. So my current thought is the gem mine is relatively warm compared to over land, maybe 50 degrees or so Fahrenheit, which is what? That would probably be about 15 degrees Celsius for my European and metric friends. Degrees Fahrenheit. So remember, and this isn't really a secret, this is just a note to the GM. Remember to emphasize how much warmer it is, Ooh, this is also, okay. So one of the other things environmentally, to sort of make the environment have, I never say this word right, verisimilitude or something like that, have the sense of realism, have the sense of tangible, it can function. As I've dialed down the sort of extremes of the environment, although it's still a significant factor. I've added much more in terms of hot springs and the remembering that the Underdark is under here and that they do have access to magic. So basically, if this was a normal world, a place locked in winter for 2 years with no sunlight, everyone would be dead. No town would survive. But they're able to scrape by, and I've been really pressing and emphasizing that, scrape by with all of these additional magical creatures that are immune to cold. They're able to get mushrooms and stuff and other food that they eat in the Underdark. They're able to cast spells to get some food. There's lots of things. Hot springs keep a couple of areas from completely icing over. A few of the deep lakes have hot springs at the bottom of them, so they haven't frozen completely, and there's a churn of nutrients there. So there's a lot there. So I want to, in this mine, relative war compared to blah, 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 get to one. I want them to get to one portion. So there's if you remember the map here, this hole here, this actually drops down into the Underdark, and that's the pathway there. There's nothing that really comes out of it except a grick that has sort of crawled up. So I want to, at the Underdark passage, have a hot spring, keeping the water fresh, and talk about growth and food stuff around it. So that sets up again the environmental options that people get. There's going to be a couple rats there, giant rats for them to fight, and that's what they're eating. I'll even say. So Janeth wants to, that thing I didn't finish before. Janeth wants to possess someone else. He will do so if given, if let go. Ooh, and I need one more secret here. I think actually, if let go and create a plot later where he kidnaps someone from town and goes off and does something. And no, not even that. And appears later in the Arcane Brotherhood plotline. Yeah, so what I'll have to do is Janeth will get away. He'll link up the other Arcane Brotherhood, which come mages in the area, which they've heard rumors about, and they're seeing some of the after effects of, but they haven't met yet, and they won't meet until later on in the module. It's a sort of a late stage stake. So yeah, that would be great. You run into a creature that you ran into the first couple adventures and you come back later at like 6 months later. That would be awesome. So I actually don't want him to get away because of it. I still want him to sort of but if they capture him, he's going to do everything he can to convince the players, hey, let me go. I'll tell you the information you want. And all the players have to do really is grab this book and threaten the book, and he'll go, ho, and he'll try to negotiate with them. So I'm hoping to set that up. I don't know if that will actually work out, but that will be just fine. The other thing I want to do is set up a group patron for them. And I actually don't have, I'll set that up for after Torga's plot, after the cold-hearted killer plot plays out. What will I set up there? I will set up, I'm going to set up, I don't actually have to add it now. I'll keep that for a future note. What I am going to set up is one of the people from the conclave. One of the other players has come with them, hoping to restore her house to nobility. I'll make some unified plot where this person's been a scholar and an informant for the conclave for some time, probably an artificer. And they are willing to give the players some heads up and some potions and some limited use magic items to help them in the field. And they'll sort of give them a direction. Because I think there's a general there's not enough tying of all the threads together in this, because the way the adventure is structured is you have this 10-town adventure, which are basically isolated and unconnected adventures that I want to make connected, and you burn through about 6 of them in that chapter 1. Chapter 2, you basically do that same thing again, but on the greater area outside the 10 towns in Icewind Dale itself. So you do another 5 or 6 or 7 adventures out disconnected. I'll make them all connected. So having the central patron will help them send them along, but I don't need to put it too much in the notes. I just know I want them coming forward because there's nothing to tease here really, or is there? If I want an artificer of the conclave, this would be a great time to tease it. All right, here's what I want. So Janeth, this is going to be great. All right, I don't know if the secret will come out, but Janeth's arch enemy was an artificer in the region, and I'll make them a long-living species, dwarf or elf, somebody who could have known the grandparents of the paladins player and sort of have and serve them maybe, and have some point of view of reestablishing the house, and associated with the conclave to have some connection to Nim the wizard, and then I can even give them some connection to the Harper for the other. So that'll be a nice hub for the player. So Janeth's arch enemy was an artificer in the region. Name him. I'll come up with a name later. Dwarf or elf. To foreshadow the party's patron. Yeah, so I'll drop a reference to this person now in Janeth if they question him, and I'll talk about his life and thorn in his side and sort of how this person worked against him. And so yeah, mine, outskirts of town, in the mine itself. Mine itself is another potential scene, and then in the mine itself. So there's a couple of encounters in there. I want 2 sub encounters. This is where I should have listed them. In the mine itself, kind of a standard progression. The hole to Underdark. And I'm running a few minutes over. I apologize. To Underdark, we'll have thermal vents, food, etc. The level 2 We'll have living quarters and hints something is going on with Janth. And then Janth's encounter set stakes of the book. Give information via questioning of ghost or reading journal. And then point, and then that's it. I point the direction to the next session, and that is it. So that's a good set of notes. This has been, these sessions are really helpful for me. I hope you're finding them useful too. So the plot basically is the players will start in town. They've already got the quest for the mine. They go to the mine. They'll encounter the town guard captain before they get there, who grouses at them a little bit. They do a little role play. It sets a stage for his connection to the Charlton Syndicate and to that there's a greater conspiracy. The players then go into the mine. It gives them some information about the environment, and this is how people are living here. And there is actually some options for them, and lets them know what some of these sort of environmental options are. It sets up the kobolds and that something odd is going on with these kobolds and more than meets the eye. So when they get to the final encounter with Janth, they have at least an option. They can choose to fight them after a couple of fights with kobolds and giant rats and maybe a grick before this, and then they can choose to talk it out and negotiate with Janth, or they can choose to read the book and kill him after. Or there's even a third option where Janth gets away by possessing a player character, grabbing a book and running out, which would be, wow, that would be a bananas adventure after that. I kind of don't want that to happen, but I do like things. I really love as a DM to tell the story, set the stage, and then see where the dice take us. That's why I could choose not to do it, but I've loved that sense of uncertainty. The dice for me as a GM surprise me sometimes, and I love to be surprised by as a GM, either by player action or by outcomes that I didn't predict how the world reacts. I love it. It's something I enjoy about DMing. And that will end the adventure when they get through with Janth, I'm sure. They might do some role playing, but that sets them up to go to Kevin's cairn to confront Torga and Sobek at the tomb of this Holland character, and it sets them up to get some magic items themselves if they're able to get through that adventure. So that's great. I love it. All right. I want to thank you for joining me here. This is my second stream. I really, really, really appreciate you joining me here. It was a new channel, as I said last week, so it would really, really help me if you can like this video, if you could subscribe, leave some comments down on the tavern wall if you're seeing this later. Thank you very much for the chat that happened during here, and I really appreciate people joining me. Again, if you could share it on social media, that would be great. I plan to do more these every week at 12 noon Eastern time on Saturdays. I do plan, people have sent me some DMs on Twitter, I do plan on making more arranged videos on YouTube at a later date, DMing advice, especially for the real nitty-gritty at the table. I feel like what's missing from a lot of commentary on YouTube for D&D is it's just this ideal situation where they say, well, just do this and everything works out. And that's great. Those are great baseline pieces of advice. But the truth is that social groups are much more messy. So I would love to talk through all of the options you want to consider about balancing your friendships and managing your relationships with people and all the considerations for talking to them and making DMing better and running better games and running better parties. I will do that. It's going to be a few weeks still because I want to get used to this platform. I want to get used to this workflow. I don't want to overtax myself with time. This one show a week right now, that really works for me. Once I get comfortable with the recording and the editing pieces of all this, I'll go ahead and I'll feel more comfortable putting together a weekly show as well, with it mostly featuring DMing advice. So again, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week. It's been a great pleasure to do this. Please like and subscribe. I will see you next week for our next session prep. I really appreciate you attending. Thank you very much. And we will be back soon. See you next week, everybody. Take care.
I feel night